Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studio is definitely a person that is connected nationally, but started through some Michigan roots and so much more. So, holding down the district from Congress and actually in my footprint of where things would be. And people definitely know as he's been a person that's taking on some battles even against, as they say, 45 and other things, but a background in the health, and we're going to find out so much more. Congressman Shri Thanedar, how are you today?
I am good.
Okay.
I am good. It's a beautiful day in Detroit.
Yeah, man. It's a lot warmer in October than we used to, but nobody's mad about that.
And I love your studio and all the
you.
decoration, the uniqueness of the art.
Yeah.
Wall hangings, love it.
Yeah, man, a lot of culture we put into this. That's really the mission with Detroit is Different. The thought process is culture will heal community through the media and events that we do. And when we start, I always start like with the Detroit story and like how many generations deep and everything. But what's your relationship to Detroit? Did you already have family here? What's your Detroit story?
Well, look, in 2010, I had a business that had 500 employees.
Okay.
Big, huge business, national, Miami, Florida, and St. Louis, Missouri, and New Jersey. And I had a business here in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Okay.
And in that recession of 2010, I lost it all.
Okay. So even before we get to that, because that's even big to like get a business to 500 people. I guess let's go back to the roots of how you get into business and what was the practice and building up to that. Where you start? Where's your family from? Where are you based?
Well, look, I grew up in southern India. My father was a clerk, a clerical job he had. And at the age of 55, he lost his job. So I had 6 sisters, a brother. I was 14 years old, but I was the oldest son.
Okay, so in your culture, I know a little bit about it, and I know like some of the caste system, what I read from here, but Southern India, first, what part? What's what village? What's the name of Southern India?
The name is Belgaum. It's a small town. And we lived in a little place, 900 square feet. We slept on the floor. We sat, ate on the floor.
Wow.
So the bathroom, the toilet was like outhouse. So you got to walk 100 feet to get to the toilet, which has no running water, no electricity. And I worked as a janitor when I was 14 years old.
Okay.
Cleaning offices, cleaning toilets, get a little bit of money, gave that money to my mother so she can run the household when my father lost his job.
Wow. Okay. And as we see, like with the family and the vision from there, for certain humble beginnings, in that part, what leads you to think about coming here to America?
Well, look, I wanted to lift my family out of poverty. I've seen my mother struggle putting food on the table. I've seen my mother struggle getting health care for my sister. My sister used to have a lot of health problems. And getting some doctor's visit, going to the hospital, the costs were so high. And I said, I don't want my family to live in poverty like this anymore. And I'm going to do everything possible. So when I was 14, I started working hard, doing odd jobs, going to college. I got graduated sooner than most kids would do. I jumped grades so that I can start earning sooner. And then I got an opportunity to come to America.
Okay. And what classes were you taking up? How did you even make a decision of like, okay, I want to do this? Were you thinking more so you want to do something to make a lot of money, or were you studying? What was your studies in?
Well, look, having grown up in poverty, my number one goal was to be rich, make money so that my family, my mother, I can take care of my siblings, take care of education from my brother. So the goal was to get a job quickly and help my family get out of poverty. When I got an admission into America to start my PhD, so I had a bachelor's in chemistry and I also had a master's in chemistry. because the public education is free in India.
Mm.
So I didn't hardly had to pay any fees, tuition, exempted because my income was so low.
So with that, like even going through to get through college, you didn't have any cost for college?
Absolutely not. So I
Wow.
graduated from college with zero loans because the government subsidized education.
Hmm.
And giving education to people like me living in poverty, that really empowered me. That gave me the skills I needed to succeed in life. And so I started applying because I heard about America. This is back in 1978.
Okay, it's a lot of stuff in 78, but even before that, you said chemistry. Chemistry is one of those classes where, boy, oh boy, a lot of people are like, what drew you into chemistry? What was the connection?
Well, look, when you go for sciences, chemistry sciences, you get a job quickly. So I didn't do it because I like chemistry. I did it because that's the quickest, easiest way to get a job because that was my goal. Get earning.
What was at that time, like I guess in the 70s, where were a lot of the Indian college students working in with the chemistry degree? What was the work that was before you?
Well, people usually, interestingly, there were no jobs in science and chemistry.
Oh man, okay.
The economy in India was terrible
at that time.
At the time. So the best job you can get is a bank job, a job in a bank. But the bank job was very secure because banks were owned by the government. And so I got a job as a cashier, like a teller in a bank.
Okay.
So suddenly I'm handling
money.
Which I had so short of. But then I realized I don't want to just be a cashier rest of my life. I want to keep advancing. My always goal is I'm always asking myself, what's next? What am I going to do next? And I said, well, I got to get a master's degree. So I got a master's degree. Then I got a scientific job. So I worked in the India's Atomic Research, Nuclear Research Center.
Okay, a nuclear research center in the 70s. I can only imagine the type of stuff you all were working on, sort of just from the outside in, because I have like the movie perception and what Americans say. But what were you all working in? And were you like the youngest person on that team, or was it a lot of other people like you?
Well, I was one of the youngest people on the team, and my job was what they call a health physicist. What does that mean is, look, when you're working in nuclear radiation, you cannot see it, but your body can get exposed to the exposure to nuclear radiation. And this is harmful. So my job was to make sure that the workers in the nuclear power plant don't get exposed to radiation more than what is allowed by international regulations, because additional exposure can cause you health effects. And so I had monitors and measuring equipment. I would give people a little batch. That batch will tell me how much radiation they're exposed to. And my job was to keep the workers safe. Workers, because, the ownership wants people to keep working. And they weren't as concerned about workers' health. So my job was to make sure the workers doesn't get exposed to this harmful radiation any more than they had to, and that they remain healthy.
Okay, and you're talking, all of that sounds like, I definitely don't know so much in Indian standards, but that sounds like a lot of like what OSHA laws would be here in America, and especially around like nuclear time. Like, I guess a lot of those laws, and some are still being uplifted and continued and carried on, but a lot of that is founded in that 70s era. So this is technically like, how new was the discipline? How new was the whole field?
It was very new because the local standards were not as good for workers. Workers didn't get a lot of safety training. The worker safety wasn't an important part for the ownership. But the International Nuclear Regulatory Commission mandated that any nuclear facility anywhere in the world must make sure that the workers are not overexposed. And that was my job.
Wow. Okay. Did you have any fears doing that? Or was it just one of those things that it's like, okay, how did you prepare yourself mentally for working around that stuff and just, being informing people like, all right, now we got to be ready. What was that like for you?
Well, early in on that, that's when I really learned how important it is that we respect working class.
Hmm.
How important it was that we protect them, make sure that they not only they get a good living, they get good wages, but they have a safe work environment to work in, because it's life and death, and their lives are as important as anybody's life. And for a worker to be not exploited, for a worker to be able to get the wages that he or she needs, at the same time work in a safe environment. And that's what I learned very early in my life.
Okay. All right. So from there, now I guess we can kind of pick up for the PhD program in America after working there. So you have some experience working in the field of health. You get this PhD opportunity. Where do you come? Where do you go to school?
Well, I go to school in University of Akron, Ohio.
Oh, okay. The Rubber City.
Rubber City,
Okay.
because my PhD is in polymer science. But before, when I got this admission, all I needed to do was go to the American Embassy and get a student visa. So then in those days, I have to go 5 o'clock in the morning. I stand in line. At 11 o'clock, I get called in for an interview. And this lady, the first time I'm talking to a American person, this was a white American lady. Her name is Virginia. And she asked me a bunch of questions. And after that, after 10 minutes of interview, she just pushed my papers through the window. And she said, Mr. Thanedar, I cannot give you a student visa.
Wow. Why were you rejected?
Well, she was concerned that I'm poor and that I may not come back to India. The goal was that I go for my studies as a non-immigrant, get my studies and come back. That was what the visa was supposed to be for. And she said, you're so poor, you have nothing. And I kept going back to her with more evidence, and she kept denying. So she denied my visa 4 times. She rejected my visa.
So with that, I like to, sometimes I stop in Detroit is Difference and give some more context. And we've had other episodes about this, but if you don't know, the customs agency, especially now under this administration, a lot more looked at, but there are many different types of visa, like from K-1 to like
J-1, H-1B visas,
yes,
green cards.
And based on like a lot of questions, especially like what you said, like, will you come back? What work will you do? Even like working visas are different as far as like the taxation. So that's why sometimes it's weird, some of the things that are said from this administration. But it's a whole process, a whole system that does connect with a lot of people looking to come to America. And you're going through this program and you're rejected. I guess the next question is, where did you learn your English? How did you go about just like, I guess, kind of finding out more about American culture to take that exam and be ready for it?
Well, look, I spoke to my mother. My mother never spoke any English. So at home, we spoke Marathi. In grade school, I studied in a Marathi medium school. So only in college, I started learning English.
Okay.
So I'm not a native English speaker. And my accent comes in because when I came to America, I was 24 years old. But to finish up our story about how I got the visa to come here, so 5th time I had nothing new to give. She had rejected my visa 4 times. So the same papers that she rejected, I resubmitted them, and I got my visa approved.
Okay.
And I said, why did Miss Virginia change her mind? And they said, Miss Virginia has gone to America for her vacation.
Oh, okay.
And someone else looked at your papers and they thought they were okay.
Okay, so hey, well, sometimes happenstance and luck strike, and there you go. Take the opportunity.
So very first time, then I got on the plane. I've never traveled by airplane before.
Okay, that's a long flight.
It's a long flight. I had $20 in my pocket, and actually 16 because I had a couple beers on the plane.
There you go.
Yeah, and so I landed in New York. They told me it's going to be cold. Those are days you can't go to Google then to find out. This is 1979. So I wore my sandals and a sweater because I thought America is going to be cold. And it was freezing in New York.
Yep.
And I go there and $20 in my pocket. and a great country, but I didn't know anybody in the United States.
Okay, so you land in New York, but you're accepted into the school in Akron. And with $20, how do you get from New York to
Well,
Ohio?
I already had a ticket from Mumbai
Oh,
to
okay, okay.
Akron.
All right, all
So
right,
I
all
had to
right.
change a flight, my
Okay.
connecting flight,
And then you get there.
and got to Akron. The first thing I saw, some students came in with the winter jackets in their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I started. I got my studies. I would teach undergraduate students
Mm.
chemistry. So that's how I got my tuition waived.
Mm.
And that's how I was able to run. They would pay me $300 a month
Mm.
to teach the undergraduate students as a part-time job. And I would take $75 every month out of that, send it to India so my mother could put food on the table.
Definitely that. And I also want to give the highlight that also when you have these visas, especially like student work visas, you can't, well, you're not supposed to do other work and things like that. It's like other caps on what you can do, when you can do, how you can move around and everything. But you find yourself in Akron. And Akron is gonna be almost just as cold as New York sometimes. so,
Yeah.
how did you adjust to living in Akron in Ohio? How did you even find? Like, did you find any of the Indian community in Northern Ohio?
There was some Indian community, and often they lived, they cooked Indian food, they listened to Indian music,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of made a little India here.
Mm.
I wanted to learn about the American culture.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really liked the American freshman students and how they live their lives and the parties. I wanted to be with them more than I wanted to be with my Indian fellow graduate students.
Okay.
I spent more time. I had more American friends than Indian friends.
At that time,
Yeah.
and we're also talking late 70s, early 80s.
Yes.
So this is like a transition from a presidential lens from like a Carter administration into a Reagan administration, which, that's where trickle down economics start and a lot of other things are happening.
Yeah.
Internationally, things are happening. But also, I guess during this time, um, as those international trades are opening up, things are beginning to change more in India too. Uh, what was your perspective on like what was happening globally at that time? Were you thinking like, okay, I can stay here. I just want to be a professor. What was your thought process?
My thought process again was finish my education,
Okay.
but at the same time, learn as much as I can about the American life.
What stood out? What were some of those things that stood out to you in that time?
I like how, in India, they have arranged marriages. Your parents decide who you should marry. I like the fact that people would get to know the dating part of. I really like that people get to know each other and they only marry someone if they love that person. So I thought that was fascinating.
Now, one of those things that you uplift too, and like I say, this is what I understand is studies I've never visited, but heard a lot. But in India, definitely many arranged marriages, but also it spoke to as one of the many colonies of Britain became like a caste system. So a caste system, so people kind of understand it. And I would like for you to explain and more go into it. But that also I know impacts marriage. And it's like this in other cultures. And in some ways, I guess you could argue somewhat in America, but like basically if you're at this caste, you wouldn't marry a person from like a lower class because we want to keep the wealth amongst these families coming together and share in the abundance we have.
Yeah, but to tell you the truth, I didn't quite care for the caste system.
Mm.
And I didn't really believe. My mother did believe that, but I didn't really care for that.
What do you remember, I guess, like when you were there and how did you, as you not believing in it, how did you develop that thought process and why do you think so many people, not just your mother, but why do you think the culture has embraced that there?
Well, that is how in olden culture, that is how it was. People were divided by their the type of function they do. Certain people are supposed to get educated and they're learned. Others supposed to just do business. Another class is supposed to go be the warriors and fight wars. and another caste was supposed to just do the menial jobs. And I didn't really believe in that system. I really felt that a person should do what he or she wants. It's your ambition, your dreams, and you should pursue your dreams regardless of what caste you come from. And that's what I did. I didn't try to do what I'm supposed to do by the caste system. I kept having these big dreams coming to America. And then when I came here, I wanted to start my own business. So after my PhD, I got a job for about 6 years. I worked as a chemist. And then I said, I want to start something of my own.
Okay. All right. So I guess the chemistry stays in something different. When you were working for those 6 years, what were you doing in chemistry?
Well, I was discovering. I'm a scientist. I am a researcher. So I do inventions. So I invented new products, new kind of paints, new kind of paint additives that make the paint better. One of the things that I invented was the whiteboard. You see the whiteboard where you can write on it and then wipe off.
Yeah, the dry erase board.
That dry erase board. So that technology is something that me and my company developed. So we did a lot of inventions. And later on, when I started a little business, I bought this little 3-person business for $75,000.
Okay.
And then that business became, in 2010, the business was worth about $200 million.
Okay. And I definitely want to get to that in the journey, because a lot of people definitely say, okay, a businessman that has done a lot of things. But before we even go there, where do you buy the business? What was the vision? And when did you say, okay, I want to move into entrepreneurship?
Well, look, I was working in this big, huge company. And I was doing discoveries and I'm doing inventions. But a lot of times there was internal politics. Oh, if he discovered something, I'm not going to do his product. I'm going to do something else. So I saw the politics within the big corporation, and I said, for me to be able to do what I want to do, it's important that I own my own company. And so I had this entrepreneurial ambition, wanting to be a business owner of my own so I can control the decisions, I can do the good things, good work, and not be subject to this internal company politics. And so I wasn't sure what kind of business I want. And I ran into Dr. Clara Craver. She's a 65-year-old white lady, and she owned a testing business. She would do chemical testing to solve problems. Like, for example, Bosch and Lomb, a big, huge eye care company, they made contact lens solution. And one batch of contact lens solution, when people used that to clean their contact lenses, was causing eye irritation. And they couldn't figure it out. They're a huge, big company. They have lots of staff. They came to this lady, and she solved their problem. And told them what's wrong with their product and what needs to change to do that. So that was, she was solving problems, industrial problems, but it was a little company. Her annual revenues were only $150,000. So I went to her and I said, I want to learn your business. This is so interesting. And she taught me. I worked with her. She paid me $15 an hour. I learned her business. And one day I said, Mrs. Clever, I want to buy your business. And she sold it to me for $75,000. I had no money. So I went to the bank. I had to go. 6 banks turned me down, but a 7th bank gave me a loan so I could buy that business. And then I started growing that business.
What year is this?
This is 1990.
Okay, so 1990, definitely some shifts. Like we're looking at like Bush administration, Bush 1 administration. And where are you based? Where is the business based?
No, this is in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay, so you moved so you go still in the Midwest footprint, but Missouri.
Yeah.
And that's where that business starts.
Yeah, so my PhD was in Akron, Ohio. Then I came and worked at University of Michigan as a postdoctoral scholar.
Okay, so that was your first connection to this state.
Yes, in 1982.
Okay,
I came to Ann Arbor, Michigan, I was here for 2 years, 82 to 84, working in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And then I got a job in St. Louis, Missouri as a chemist.
And then you go there. What was your impression of Michigan when you get here for those 2 years?
Oh, I loved it. I loved the life in Ann Arbor. The campus was amazing. I met the students and the freedom, and the kids, how they back then they had the hash bash just like they do today. But I just saw the freedom that the young kids got and the life that they live. Another thing I remember about Ann Arbor is I worked in a counseling center called Ozone House. And what they did was they did family counseling, and they had a suicide prevention line. And so I volunteered while I was working at University of Michigan. I volunteered at Ozone House, and I would man the suicide hotline. And then I would do counseling for families, and we would take care of runaway kids. So give them shelter, make sure that they don't fall into the wrong situations.
Okay.
So I did that for a couple of years in Ann Arbor, and then I got this job. I got my green card, so that allowed me to stay in this country. And then I got a job in St. Louis.
In St. Louis. All right. So now you own this business in 1990. What was your thought process to keep it going? What are you doing to expand the business?
Look, this Dr. Craver, the previous owner, she was expert in infrared spectroscopy. So she would solve problems only with infrared spectroscopy. But because of my PhD, I had learned other techniques like nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy, mass spectroscopy. So I learned different techniques to solve problems.
All right. Now, Lord knows, and shout out to Ms. Barton. That was my chemistry teacher in 10th grade. And I need you to explain a little bit of one or two of those things you just opened up. I know you're testing things just from what I do in media, like A/B testing and things like that. Can you explain a little bit of what that is?
When you're trying to analyze a chemical and to know what it is, you can, there are many different tools. If you want to examine somebody's health, you do blood test, and then you do urine test, and you do blood pressure monitoring, and you will do a CT scan and an X-ray. So her specialty was just one of those tools. So she would use only one tool to solve problems. I knew all of these other tools and how to use them. So I started addressing more complex problems using all of these different tools that I have. She only had one hammer. So every problem she would solve with that hammer. But I had this different toolbox. So I would use all of that, and my business started growing. I did more marketing. Let people know what kind of work I do.
What were the businesses you mentioned, like Bausch and Lomb, and I think you're not in Ohio, but I always think Procter and Gamble, and but I guess really all the food industries. What businesses were you working with taking on contracts?
All kinds of businesses. One of my customer, he made hash browns, frozen hash browns. They would freeze the hash browns, and that's all his product was. He was in business for 65 years. And all of a sudden, people started returning the product back to the grocery stores because it smelled like bleach.
Oh, yeah.
Hash brown. Nobody wants to.
You got that right. I'm not eating that hash brown myself. I'm going to pass on that.
So, and this owner, they could not figure out what went wrong. So he came to my company and he said, my business is going to shut down if I don't solve this problem. Tell me what's going on. I'm not doing anything different in my manufacturing process. So I looked at his good hash browns and bad ones and compared those, analyzed using all these techniques, chemical analysis skills. And then I found out what are the raw materials he uses to wash the potatoes. And I found that one of the things that he uses was contaminated. One of the things he uses, because when you're washing the potatoes, it makes a lot of foam. So they had to add some chemical to keep the foam down. And that chemical that he was using was contaminated. And when I solved that problem, it saved his business.
Okay, and now I got to ask. This is a Detroit question, even though we on Detroit is different because this is similar to other discussions I've had about. And shout out to Charlie Beckham and everything, but wastewater and the testing that consistently goes on for water. Because, like, I know people always will say to themselves, like, "How does this district know that today boil water or not boil water?" And I know a lot of that chemical testing is going on. But just because you may be able to give some context to this, water chemical testing, how does a government even keep up with like running those tests and knowing every day when to check, how to check, and everything?
Well, look. People don't really know, like Detroit water, river water.
Hmm.
We go fish there. We do recreational things in our lakes. But how pure is that water?
Hmm.
There are industries on the banks of the Detroit River that are leaching out chemicals, harmful chemicals,
Hmm.
in the water. Our tap water is not safe, as we found out in Flint, Michigan. There is lead contamination that needs to be continuously monitored. Even the cannabis, many of the cannabis has mold and chemicals and harmful things that needs to be tested. And the chemical testing labs like mine
Hmm.
would test these things to make sure that they are safe for people, that they don't have harmful chemicals that will impact people's lives.
Hmm.
So that is the kind of testing that we did. We
Hmm.
also, what we did was small startup companies would come to us and say, there's a small group of people in America that are affected by this disease.
Hmm.
But the big pharma companies do not want to get into creating medicine for those group of people because it's not profitable. It's just a small group of people, but they are suffering. And we have an idea. We have a molecule. Could you make this molecule and test it out and let it help us on that? So I developed medicine for either animal lives or people's lives, specifically women's lives, that big pharma companies would not develop, would not work on.
Hmm.
And I invented medications for them for those diseases. And then some small companies took those and then went to town with that, expanded that, manufactured that, made a lot of money.
Hmm.
But one of my business was to help small businesses develop, innovate products.
Okay. All right. So your business grows insurmountably. During this time in that growth, also, like you mentioned before that crash, but internationally, things are just changing in India big time too, as far as what's happening as Indians traveling to other spaces and places. I mean, I've heard even like the universities there, it may be easier to get into a university here than over there. What's your relationship with India as all of this is happening, as your business grows and your family? Or how are you like staying connected to the community there as you're growing business here?
Look, all my mother and father now they know more, but
Condolences.
they were getting up in the age. So I would every year go spend some time with my mom,
Mhm.
spend some time with my dad. I brought them over here to visit, to show my business,
Mm.
show my life here, and then they would go back. But all of my sisters, my brother, they all stayed in India. They never came back here.
Mm.
They came here. So I would go every year to go talk to them, meet them, spend some time with my family. But then people heard about my story,
Mm.
having grown up in poverty, coming to America, getting education, starting a business, being successful. So I wrote a book about my life,
Mhm.
and that book became a bestseller in India
Mm.
because a lot of young people who were living in poverty really were motivated by my book.
Mhm.
So I would go to universities, I would go to different towns, give speeches, talk to young people,
Mm.
and encourage them to dream big,
Mm.
to dream and achieve their dreams by hard work and planning and strategy. So I'll talk about my story to motivate others.
Okay. All right. And now I guess we can get to that crash. So the crash happens, impacts your business and many other businesses. What's your thought process then?
Well, look, the crash, like that is a time when U.S. government came in and saved the automakers,
Mhm.
big time. But in my case, I was a small business and I had a loan I had taken. to grow my business. And the bank got impatient. It was Bank of America. And they decided to put a receivership on my business. They sold some parts of my business. This is a $200 million business, and I owed them about $24 million because I had bought this money so I can go buy other little companies, consolidate, make a large national network of testing labs and innovation labs. And so the bank got nervous because businesses were failing. And my business lost revenue because I was working on early stage drug development. And in recession, nobody wants to invest into early stage drug development. And so the bank came in, put a receivership on me, sold everything. Because I'm a small business guy, my house was collateralized. My cars were. So they took away my cars. They foreclosed on my home. And in 2010, I lost everything. And so I put my personal belonging the day before my home is going to be foreclosed by this bank. And I learned that in Ann Arbor, Michigan, there is also a little lab that has gone out of business. And that owner of that building wants to rent that lab for any business. And I saw that on the internet. And I decided, so I took all my personal belonging day before bank was going to foreclose on my home, put it in a budget rental truck, and drove all night from St. Louis, Missouri to Ann Arbor, Michigan. The next day morning, I went and saw that landlord and I said, I want to rent your lab. And in 2010, in Ann Arbor's west side, I rented this space. The rent was only like $800 a month. And I restarted my business.
Okay. All right. And I don't even ask for this, like family life and everything. At that point, I know you are married, but what's happening with your family?
Well, look, in 1996, I lost my first wife.
Condolences.
She was a doctor, but she suffered from mental illness. And we didn't know about it. And she committed suicide in 1996.
Wow.
My children were 4 and 8 years old then. And, I understood firsthand what it does to mental illness does to a family, how it impacts the everyday things that we do, because you don't quite understand. If somebody's broken arm, you can say he has a problem, physical problem. But when your mind is hurting, is one of your family members' mind is hurting, they have this disease. This is unseen disease. There is so much stigma about it, about mental illness. And when she died all of a sudden, leaving me taking care of these 4 and 2 boys, 4 and 8-year-old, and I raised them as a single father for about 3 years. And I met a wonderful woman and got remarried. So my current wife, who I have been married now for 26 years now, is had to help me raise my boys. But that pain of losing my first wife, the mother of my children, never went away. And one of the things that I do now in Congress is focus on mental health, mental illness, making sure that the government or Medicaid or Medicare programs have sufficient funding for mental health services that we bring. When I was in the Michigan State House, I worked on putting mental health counselors in every school, because at the time there, we had a ratio of 1 student to 750 students to 1 counselor. So when someone has a mental health issue, and most of the kids, this mental health really begins when a child is 10, 12 years old. That's where the symptoms start to manifest. And that's when a child needs the most help. And when in schools there are no mental health counselors, it makes it harder for the child to deal with that. So I did a lot of work in the Michigan State House, increasing bed capacity in mental health hospitals, making access to mental health services for young kids. And that's something that I continued my work in the U.S. Congress.
Okay, and in carrying on that, I was more so, like I say, condolences on that loss, and definitely applaud you being present and understanding of that effort. But I was just thinking to myself, also, you move your whole family now, your older sons, your wife, um, cross states, and clearly, quality of life is going to be a lot different from like when the business was here versus now where you starting from scratch. How was that adjustment for family coming here and starting over?
Well, look, my wife, my second wife, Shashi, uh, when I told her that the bank is going to take everything we own, I lived in a big, huge, expensive home. I drove
Mhm.
nice cars. All of that is gone
Yeah, and that's
overnight.
I imagine that's a tough conversation for any
Yeah.
person to have with a spouse. You know what I'm saying?
But look, my wife said that, look, you grew up in poverty. You had nothing. And she said, I grew up in poverty. I had nothing. And she said, look, all this material life that we lost, we never had it before. We've lived before, we earned it, we can earn it again.
Mm,
But let's not lose hope. We have each other.
mm,
We have each other, and that matters. We have our family. We have each other, and let's work it all together.
mm.
And I had won 2 awards, Entrepreneur of the Year award from Ernst and Young. So when my bank foreclosed on my business, I was walking out for the last time, and the bank gave me a cardboard box, and he said, "Mr. Thanedar, if you want to take any of your personal things, feel free to take before you leave." So this is the building that I built. This is the lab that I built. This business. So I took my kids' pictures from my desk, and I'm walking out, and I saw these 2 trophies, Entrepreneur of the Year award that I had won, very prestigious awards. So I asked the bank, "May I take these trophies?" Those like statues, and they gave it to me.
Mm,
And I said, as I was putting those in my box, I said, I'm going to win a third one like this someday.
mm.
I come home, I've lost everything. I lost my home, I lost my cars, I lost my business. And I'm driving this budget rental truck.
Mhm.
And then I come to Ann Arbor, Michigan, restart my business. And in 6 years, the business now has gone worth almost $40 million.
Okay.
And I win this award, Entrepreneur of the Year, for the third time in the Detroit Art Institute. They had an event, and I won my award for the third time.
Mm.
And I say to myself, I achieved my American dream. But as I was looking around in Michigan, I saw a lot of people struggling. A lot of young people have no access to their American dream. And I said, what does my life means at this stage? I lost everything. I recreated it again. I have the wealth. Do I just keep accumulating more wealth, adding more zeros to my net worth, or do I go do something else? And I realized at the time that I got to go help other people that started like me, struggled like me. I got to go help them.
Mhm.
And with that thought, I sold my business. I took $1.5 million out of that sales process, gave it to all of my employees,
Mm,
not just the top employees, including the janitor, the clerical, the secretary. Everybody got money based on how long they worked for me
mhm.
because they made me successful. So I shared that money to all of my employees. And then I decided to get into public service.
Okay, now public service and politics. Now we're definitely into the space of. I remember, I believe it was a gubernatorial run, and then from there into the state house. The banner was like he got a lot of money, he getting into politics, and I don't know where he's coming from and everything. You said that public service was something you were drawn to. Um, I guess the big question is. Why didn't you approach it from like a philanthropic lens? Why didn't you say like, okay, I can maybe build an endowment and get into philanthropy? What was the thought process towards politics over philanthropy?
Good question. I thought about it. And I did some philanthropy,
Mhm,
but look, I could take my $40 million and start helping people.
mhm,
And I would run out of money maybe in 10 years, 5 years,
mhm,
because the need of people are huge. We need to give skill set training to our people. We need to create economic opportunities. We need to give people money to start their own businesses. We need to improve our education system. There is just so much need out there in public that my money alone as a philanthropy would not have solved very much of a problem. But if I can use the government's resources, Michigan has a budget of $80 billion. If I can use that effectively to help people, I can do a lot better than just using my money.
So now I guess the next question becomes before that, like you're here, you're working, you're in academics, you're embracing so much of American culture as time goes on. But political landscape, especially just from a lot of the people I know, politics is different. Detroit is different, but politics is different as well. Um, I, what was your relationship with a lot of politicians and the political landscape as an entrepreneur? And how did it shift when you began running for office?
Well, look, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I was very well accepted. As a scientist, I was very well accepted. But as a politician, someone who is going to be the leader of our state as the governor, then people started wondering, do we want someone that doesn't look like us? Someone that doesn't speak like us? Do we want a person like this? He can be my doctor. He can fix my computer. He can own a business. But do I want someone looking like that, speaking like that as my governor? And all across Michigan, the answer was no. No, the only people that said yes was the people of Detroit.
Okay, so let's talk about Detroit. You had this business. What was your relationship with Detroit like leading into? I know you spoke of being in Ann Arbor. When's the first time you even come to Detroit? And I know it may have been in the 80s when you were in Ann Arbor. And what was the relationship start?
Well, yes, when I was in the 80s, I used to come to Detroit, spend time. But then when I lived in Ann Arbor, I often came to Detroit for the Tigers games or the Lions games, So just like any other suburban person, I came to Detroit to enjoy the restaurants and the riverfront
And some of the culture.
But when I ran for governor, after I lost that election, even though I put a lot of my own money to run that election, I looked at and somebody prepared a heat map of the entire state of Michigan. And what the heat map was it had different colors for myself, for Gretchen Whitmer, and it showed me how did I do all across Michigan. And it was so interesting to see that Detroit elected me for governor. The people of Detroit wanted me to be the governor. And I beat Gretchen Whitmer in Detroit. I won Detroit, but I did not win Northern Michigan. Northern Michigan, I did terrible. Many other parts of Michigan, I didn't do so well. But Detroit, I did well. And I said, why? Why is that? And I started understanding that. I started visiting Detroit more. I started talking with people in Detroit more.
What were you discovering in your conversations and your connections?
They liked who I am. They like the struggles that I have. Detroit is very resilient. Detroit is hard fighters. People of Detroit are fighters. They never take no for an answer. They're always ready to struggle, to overcome the adversity. They have dealt with a lot of adversity. People of Detroit has dealt with more adversity than any other people, any other city. And they see in my life that I have dealt with adversity, whether it is the suicide of my wife and her mental illness, or growing up in dire poverty. Many nights I had gone to bed without food. I'm used to going to bed hungry. In my home, the younger children got the milk, but the older ones like me had to do the sacrifices. I may give half of my food to my younger child, a younger brother or sister, because they need it more than I do. So I was used to sharing, I was used to struggling, but yet I knew how to dream big, just like a person in Detroit.
Mm.
The Detroit people are resilient. They are fighters, and they want to struggle. They don't want. They're willing to fight against injustice. Because they've seen a lot of injustice. They've seen a lot of marginalization, and they are used to, and they know how to fight that fight. And they saw that fight in me, and they saw that struggle in me, and I overcome that just like they do, and they want to.
So, and always when we think of Detroit, this is you were in St. Louis, but like some of the like East St. Louis and a little bit of Akron and everything. This is a black city, you know, with a lot of black traditions, culture, history, especially when it comes to like the political leadership and the lens. As you're running, this is in the shadows of emergency management, bankruptcy, a lot of which, rest in peace, my godmother, Joanne Watson would say, illegal bankruptcy, and a lot of actions of what happened to our school systems. A lot of the assets of Detroit are just being stripped away for so long. And in a lot of ways, you know, it feels like an attack on the black culture that's here. Um, I know you're hearing this in the travels and everything. So it's like, how do we uplift that? How do we keep something connected to that? Because it just really feels like it's so many attacks on Detroit. Um, do, as you're looking, how do you get an understanding of some of that perspective of a lot of Detroiters as you talk about the resiliency? Sometimes feels like necessary because we're dealing with so much like weighing on us, period.
Well, look, the politicians haven't served our city well. Right from Rick Snyder's bankruptcy to stripping, the municipal workers lost their retirement benefits. Detroit's been overtaxed $600 million. Detroit, the water charges, the electric charges, our utility costs are the highest. Our auto insurance costs are the highest in the nation. Detroit, the people of Detroit are strong. The people of Detroit are work hard, but at the same time, we have not been served right. We have been deceived. We have been overtaxed, and that has to change. And look what happened in Detroit. At one time, we had 1.8 million people in our best days. And then that started eroding and eroding. Even in the last 10 years, if you look at the census, we have lost 100,000 people. So from 700,000 population, we have come now to 600,000. So 1 in every 7 person left Detroit in the last 10 years. Why is that? Why is that happened? Why have we lost people? What is it saying when 100,000 people in 10 years leave this city?
I think really even when we talk about like the 1.8, we're looking at certainly after the rebellion, but even really before the rebellion, when you study like, okay, the stats, like we're looking at like a peak and apex of a population here, late 50s, early 60s, but continually as we look at, and I just see this lens of America a lot through race, as black leadership moves into positions of leadership, that definitely draws the lines. And then we have, Coleman Alexander Young, but also L. Brooks Patterson, which definitely draw that line between like a suburbs versus a city debate and the resourcing of what's happening in and around here. I actually just had a recent interview even about the county executive and Bill Lucas and some of those things. So shout out to Brenda Butler. Historically, certain things are just unprecedented here, but also Detroit was like a land of milk and honey when we just even think of what General Motors meant to the United States of America at one point in time. versus where things are now. And I'm not necessarily like attacking General Motors, but all of my business school, like you go to any business school, one of the number one things they're going to say is, look what happened to General Motors. Like sometimes seeing moving forward has become tough, especially in this landscape of what resources exist. And that where you've moved into legislature, starting in the state, and now you're in Congress. How has it been advocating to get resources here, and what has been like your key focus of like what will help solve some of these problems?
Well, look, when I was in the Michigan
State House.
State House,
Mhm,
I worked on the appropriations. So
mhm,
I was on the appropriations. So I was able to bring a lot of money for education for Detroit,
mhm,
raise the per pupil equity for the first time. And the 2 years that I was in Michigan, those 2 years were the highest education budget
mhm.
we ever had. So I helped bring a lot of money for mental health. Helped bring a lot of money from from state to mental health, for education, for entrepreneurship, business growth, skills training, workforce development. And I continued that work in the US Congress because, my vision for Detroit is that we need to grow this city with maybe over 1 million people.
Hmm.
I would like to see maybe 1.5, 1.8 million people in this because this city can handle that level of people.
So I do have this question in about that because it always talks about like if we boost up that density, it's going to definitely change some zoning on local levels, but also it's going to change some of the culture of the people that have been here. And like, it's always the debate, gentrification. And for me, it's I want to live in a neighborhood with people that want to live in that neighborhood. The challenge becomes when it's considerations and benefits given to people that aren't even here, where people that are here have not been acknowledged. Like a classic debate. I mean, I had years ago, and I think she's like running a lot of stuff. But somebody that works in the planning with the city, it's like it's not that the bike lanes exist; it's the fact that the bus stops aren't protected, and way more people take the bus than ride the bicycles. It's not that a dog park exists; it's the fact that the parks for children are not upkept, so it's like for density to increase, and that's a big discussion happening right now. That's going to change some of those neighborhoods. How if we get basically like another million residents, that's what you're saying, into Detroit proper, um, how do you include the people that are living here, that have lived here into that discussion where we're still honored, acknowledged, and connected?
Well, that's a very good point because people have lived here for generations
Mhm.
and they continue to live in poverty. Look, our uh, child poverty rate in Detroit is 51%.
Yeah.
You know, 1 in 3 people in Detroit live at or below poverty level.
Yeah, and I mean, especially right now, I mean, I hate to make it so contemporary right now, but like with that government shutdown, everything people are saying about the EBT cards and what's going to happen in communities like mine, it's like, damn,
Yeah, 46% of my constituents depend on the SNAP, the Supplemental Nutritional Program, and that's being cut. So, Medicaid, many of my constituents live on that. So, the focus need to be not only just growth, but we need to create opportunities. We need to create beyond the band-aid solutions of food, supplement. We need to really create economic opportunities.
What does that look like?
Well, skill sets. We need to really. The reason people left, 100,000 people left Detroit in the last 10 years is one, we don't have enough jobs in Detroit. Two, we have public safety issues. I've talked to many residents and they're afraid even to take their garbage can from home to the curbside
Mm.
because they're afraid. People have told me about the crime in their neighborhood. The crime is an issue. People want to raise their family in a safe environment.
Mhm.
Look at our schools. The quality of schools in our neighborhoods is nowhere close to what ought to be. If you go to the richer suburbs like Bloomfield Hills or Salem or Ann Arbor, they have good schools. We have great caste tech, but not everybody can get into Renaissance or caste tech. Many of our schools don't have the supplies that they need. They don't have the safety. The teachers, they can't keep up with the staffing and teachers and safety. So we need to raise our education level. We need to give our kids the best education that they can get. Just like when I grew up in poverty, the government there subsidized my education so I can get this education I need to advance. And our children aren't getting that kind of education. We don't have the safety. Our rents are going up. The cost of living in Detroit
Very
is
much
one of
so.
the highest. One of the
Yes.
highest cost of living. And on top of that, if you add that $600 million of overtaxation of people of Detroit, look, it's great to have. I was yesterday at the Wilson Park; it's beautiful. But then our sidewalks are crumbling. Our seniors are falling, hurting themselves. If you go into our neighborhoods, some of our neighborhoods, the life has not changed. I've talked to residents and they've told me how some illegal, unethical activities happen in the next door that is abandoned, next door home. So we need to create a safe environment so that families can live in peace. Families can raise their children in a good environment, that they have good paying jobs. They have the skill sets that they need to get good jobs. They have schools here where their kids can get the best education that they can get. So there's just so much that we need to do. Our public housing situation is really bad. Our public transportation is awful. One of the worst public transportation in Detroit, anywhere in the country.
So definitely like the Transit Riders Union would speak to that. But in more of a macro, similar to like even things internationally that I read, like for a lot of these problems that people see, it's like two sides to the coin. It's people, industries, and mechanisms that take advantage of and exploit the conditions that do exist like this. And that's why a lot of this persists, kind of like the whole, like the classic debate. Me and my dad have talked about this before too. Shout out to my dad. But high unemployment is actually something that a lot of employers take advantage of, because if it's high unemployment, that means I can get a very overqualified person to work at less than what they need to work and feel what I need to be there. Plus, it presents one of the key debates. Like I say, I'm not as anti-capitalist as many, but I definitely do not like the concept of scarcity, because we introduce scarcity. So people are so happy to get anything that they'll accept everything. And some of these same conditions have been very pervasive in certain industries where, people kind of don't know what's going on, and it keeps variability, but it also gives more of a controlling interest from that business owner's perspective. And you've definitely sat in the seat of that entrepreneur. What has been, as you present these ideas, how has the corporate community responded to a lot of your initiatives? Because for this to happen, it's definitely going to take, fair taxes.
Yeah. Well, look, we need the private sector. We need the corporations. But this should not be just a one-way street. It shouldn't be just that the billionaires and the rich people and the corporations get all the benefits, and the people in the neighborhood who are living in generations of poverty don't even get the crumbs. That is not the system that I think is sustainable. What we need to do, as downtown looks so beautiful, we have these fancy, nice restaurants and buildings and tall skyscrapers. We need to lift up people in the neighborhoods, and we need to do more for that. And that has to start with building more housing. I would like to see 100,000 housing units in Detroit.
Wow.
We could use those today. We could use that. There's about 17,000 low-income housing needed today in Detroit. We need to make our streets safer, so families can raise their children in safety.
Now, sometimes, and I'm sounding a little Chase Cantrell here, and this isn't just in Detroit, this is just in America. The cost of of building and constructing homes has gone up exponentially. And that's what makes even a lot of the demolition of these homes so tough, because some of these structures just, making like a 4-family flat is something that is very out of the ordinary in today's market of materials and build and everything like that. But how do you get a developer, because a lot of developers feel like, I'm not going to make no money at that, so why do it over there? Why not just continue to feed the machine as opposed to like looking to be more equitable? What brings that developer to the table to be open to that idea?
I think the money is there. The money is there. And look, if we invest, Detroit has, if you look at our wastewater system, sewage system, totally outdated. We had water mains breaking,
Yes.
flooding people's basements.
Yeah.
We have children dying in a van because the mother is homeless and she can't get a place to live. While we are giving hundreds of millions of dollars of tax breaks so that the rich people can become even richer. The money is there. I think we have money to invest in our education. We have the money to give a young people maybe $100,000 to start their new businesses because capital is the key. Let's have more apprenticeship centers, more workforce development. Let's invest in our communities, get rid of this water lines that had lead contamination, and our kids are drinking this lead tainted water that is impacting their mental abilities. Look, we have factories that are emitting harmful toxic chemicals in our neighborhood.
Kind of going back to like your first job, back to. Yep.
And we got to hold those corporations accountable. Right now, they are policing themselves, these big corporations. Now, the problem here is the corruption. The problem here is our political system is so corrupt. Our politicians are beholden to corporations and the wealthy people. Look at today. The cost to run for a state house is about $50,000 to $100,000. The cost to run for a Congress position, anywhere from $1 million to $5 million.
I was going to say probably $1 million.
To run for U.S. Senate,
you probably need about $10 million or something. Maybe 100.
To become a president, over $1 billion.
Yeah.
Now, look, where is this money coming from? This money is coming largely from the corporations. This money is largely coming from wealthy individuals who are giving. Look at the mayoral campaign. Many of the rich people have given $8,000 each to the mayoral candidates. Now, why do you think these rich people are giving this kind of money to the politicians? Is it because they are so philanthropic and they are such a good at heart? Or are they looking for some kind of benefits from these politicians when they get elected?
I can definitely say, especially connected to like Detroit Next, both have uplifted that the money given won't sway favor, but it definitely is one of those things where you're going to have more access. And sometimes access is all you need because it's such a disconnect when we even think about the voter apathy that's very pervasive here. I mean, it's maybe about 400,000 people don't vote in Detroit local elections.
Because, people have seen that politicians come and politicians go, but the politicians have not served them. Politicians say what they want to hear, but ultimately, who controls these politicians? These donors.
Which I guess, as we get like closer to a close, I mean, you come from that business background. So some of these people you knew beforehand. And did you see like, do you think that it's just all over the like, I guess the interest at play that are, I guess, controlling some of the political mechanisms for access to opportunity? What's the pitch to make to them to have that understanding that things need to be more equitable for taxes?
Look, when I became successful in my business, I did not depend on government business. So I had no connection with politicians. I did my own. I did not depend on government money, but a lot of businesses depend on government money. And so they need to really be friends with and supporting and controlling politicians. So our politicians are really controlled. It hurts me to see that in Congress, my colleagues are spending 20 to 40 hours a week not helping people. They're on the phone calling donors because call time, they call it, where they're just calling rich people trying to get $6,000, $7,000 a pop. And this is what our politicians are doing. They are dependent on money from rich people. They really cater to these rich people. And now these rich people aren't just giving this money because they are such good people and they are such good at heart. They're doing this to get access to these politicians. So that is where our major problem comes in. And I understand the apathy people of Detroit or other voters feel because the politicians give them the lip service, but they don't change their life because these politicians are ultimately beholden to the donor community, beholden to the corporate community.
That's deep. That's deep. And I definitely, I want to pick that up. I will welcome you back so we can expand on that. But this has definitely been like more of an eye-opening discussion about your background and leading to here. Definitely one of the things signature about you is your style and your flow with it too. How do you go about like, because I know you even were saying like, okay, do I do coat on, coat off? What's the feel? How you go about all of that?
Well, I really like people. I enjoy meeting people, being with real people. Not the skilled, not the career politicians, but I love meeting the moms and the kids. And I go around in the neighborhood. I would go to Russell Woods and go to a jazz concert.
Okay.
And people ask me, "Where is your entourage? Where is your staff?" And I said, "I just came by myself." And I just go. I feel very comfortable listening to people, talking with people, meeting people.
Okay.
That is yesterday at Wilson Park, I wasn't on the dais and I wasn't making speeches, but I was just walking around and talking to people, real people who stopped me, told me about what they feel about the shutdowns, what they feel about conditions in Detroit. I'm listening to people. Someone says, "I called your office yesterday. I needed this help." So I love doing that. Today after this podcast, I'm going to a church and meeting. Yesterday I was at a health fair in Highland Park.
Okay.
Talking to people concerned about health issues. So I love meeting people. I love talking to real people. And that is where I get my energy. When I come home, my wife knows. Sometime I'm come home very, very happy, and she knows I got a chance to meet with people, real people, talking with people. Sometime I come home, drained, and that's when I see more political people, playing games and the political games as opposed to really trying to be good to people. And then that drains me.
Okay. I can imagine, my brother. I can imagine. So here are my classic Detroit is different questions. But before then, if a person wants to connect with you, how do they reach out?
My website, thanedar.house.gov.
Okay. All right. So classic Detroit is different questions. Your very first car, the year, make, and model, and year you got it.
It was an Oldsmobile. It was, I think, 1963. I bought that in 1978.
Okay.
I bought it for $200.
All right. How long did it last?
It didn't last for very long. It caught on the fire. But when I couldn't afford my rent, many a nights I slept in that car. I had all of my belongings in that trunk of that car, and I slept in the car for many nights.
Wow.
Yeah. So when it got too hot, I would go to a homeless shelter and sleep in the homeless shelter. And then I've slept at times in public buildings.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, that's definitely having that understanding. So from there, I usually say, where's the first place you drove when you got it? But you said it didn't even last so long. So I don't even know if you remember that one. But question number 2. You're the DJ at the end of the Detroit fireworks. Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
Oh, I like Diane Ross. I like, any 80s songs. I love
Okay.
the pop top 40 songs.
Okay. All right. So you may go see that Bruce Springsteen movie that's out
Yeah.
soon. All right. And then last question. All right. This is the always like in Detroit question, like from other places. Strange one though. An alien ship comes down, lands right in front of your house, and alien comes out. ET says, "What's up? Take me to the most Detroit place you can take me." Where you and the alien going?
I would go to the riverfront. I love Detroit riverfront. You
Okay.
know, I just walking is so relaxing to see the water,
Hmm.
see the activity, the jet skis and the boats, and I just love that river walk in Detroit.
Okay. So you and the alien walking down the Riverwalk. I like it. Thank you so much, Shri Thanedar. This is Detroit is Different.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Detroit is different.